Welcome everyone to this presentation, and we're going to talk about burning down all your SOCs and telling you how you're all doing security operations wrong. Just kidding, a little sarcasm there. But what we are going to talk about from a SOCless perspective is working smarter, not harder. Doing more with the resources you have, spending time helping teams to be successful. Avoiding needles in the haystack, avoiding chasing ghosts. Avoiding a lot of the typical things that you do in a very traditionally minded SOC. That's really the mindset. That's what we're going to be focusing on, and let's jump right into it. So I am Kevin Paige. I am the Chief Information Security Officer at Flexport. I've been at Flexport just over 2 years. I joined Flexport to help kind of build out the security function from scratch. I had done this previously as I was the Chief Information Security Officer at MuleSoft prior to Flexport. And prior to MuleSoft, I've got over 20 years in security in both the government and in the private sector, working for various companies, building security functions out, maturing security functions, I got the opportunity to join Flexport to hopefully take a modern approach to security. One of the things I did at Flexport was hire somebody to run security operations. And that person is Taylor Merry, and I'm going to let Taylor go ahead and introduce himself next.
Cool. Well, thanks, Kevin. Yeah. So, like Kevin said, I'm Taylor Merry. I'm the head of security operations here at Flexport. I joined Flexport somewhere around 20 years of IT and security experience, mostly working in small, medium-sized organizations. In some shops, I've been the lone security person, and others, I've had small teams of analysts, engineers, kind of helping me build out the program. But regardless of the size of the team, the size of our budget, getting the answers that we need when we need it has always kind of posed a bit of a challenge to our teams all around. Lot of tried and true practices of kind of bringing in a SIM type platform, aggregating a bunch of data, sifting through it all to find the needle in the haystack. Work sometimes, a lot of pain involved and suffering to really get you to a good place in that journey. We've also oftentimes leveraged external service providers to kind of help us out with dealing with the volume of alerts and things along those lines. Again, lots of pain and suffering in there. Just about every organization that I've entered over the course of my career, I've come in, fired an incumbent, brought someone in who's done, maybe marginally better than the incumbent at the time when I joined. So when I joined up with Kevin at Flexport, we really decided that we didn't want to bring in a provider to be kind of doing that same sort of thing for us. We don't need someone to be forwarding along black box SIM alerts to us. We really wanted to try to do things a little bit differently. I'm certainly not naive enough to think that, there is some magical silver bullet that's going to do it for us. But, presented with the opportunity to do things a little bit differently, try some new tooling, capabilities, and so on and so forth, I really jumped at the opportunity and excited at what we're really working to start to build here at Flexport. Back to you, Kevin.
Great. Thanks, Taylor. And thanks for joining the team. And it's been a fun year and a half having you on the team. But back to this word SOCless, this buzzword, this clickbait, if you will, to get you to take a look at this presentation. What exactly is it? Well, let's talk about what it isn't first. Let's talk about what is a traditional SOC, right? So obviously, a traditional SOC is well known for looking for needles in a haystack. Dumping all your data into SIMs or Elasticsearches or S3 buckets, throwing some things on top of it, trying to find things. But traditional SOC is also, I think, is a lack of automation. I think it's alert overloads because you're looking for needles in a haystack. So when you're looking for a needle, you're finding all kinds of things that look like they might be needles, but they might not be needles. Lots of siloed systems, right? We need to get our systems integrated. How can we get them integrated? Well, traditionally they're not, especially if you're using a third party. Obviously they're a third party. They want you to pump their logs into their system, and maybe you have your system and you got two systems, and now you've got logs everywhere. And you've got lots of needles and lots of haystacks. And how do you do that? Slow communications, right? So if you have siloed SOC teams, they are, trying to communicate, trying to email people, trying to call people when they see a potential thing, and it's not fluid. It's not smooth, generally. It's not, the problem is the lack of context, right? So if you have a group of analysts in a traditional SOC environment, they don't have all of the context, all of the business context, all of the IT context, all of the engineering context. They're trying to group everything together and trying to be as efficient as they can as they try to find those needles in a haystack, right? We're logging all the things. We got petabytes of logs coming in a day, tons and tons of logs, right? We got to have that context if we want to solve problems quickly. And not only do we want that context quickly, right? Like, hopefully we can get it real time, right? Hopefully we can know what's happening right now and not what's happening in a log that we logged, a week ago or 3 hours ago or 5 hours ago. If you've got automated systems, by the time you see something in a log, maybe those systems already been redeployed. Maybe there's all kinds of things that could have happened in today's infrastructure. That make this buzzword of SOCless, just kind of, a different approach to SOC, starting to do things differently, right? And I think one of the things that it's definitely not is, sometimes, a lot of times, people would use third-party SOCs or create a SOC to check a compliance box, right? And they're not really using security as an enabler, right? And we want to use security as an enabler, and we want to kind of fix all these things that I think happen traditionally that make security slow to respond. What is this better way? What is this buzzword? Let's look at logs. Like, logs are always going to be a thing, but let's look at events. Let's look at known good baselines. Let's see when there's a deviation in that baseline. And let's respond to that. Let's respond to real things, and let's not, start looking for needles in haystacks, right? That's not a good use of anybody's time. People generally aren't learning a lot. People aren't growing. We got to fix that, right? I mentioned automation integration, critical, right? We have to, not just log all the things, but automate and integrate all the things. It's absolutely critical. In today's day and age, when our engineering teams are, building and deploying software in a fully automated way, our security teams need to be doing security side by side in a fully automated, integrated way. The more and the closer we can work together using similar tooling with our partners in crime, the better it's going to be. We want to make sure that we're providing guardrails, and we want to work side by side, using those same toolings to get to a good spot. I really get tired of seeing all the security bolt-on point solutions that help you, maybe 0.01% of the time find something after the fact, that only your security analysts look at and nobody else in the world cares about them, right? So if you're using security tools, I would hope that, the teams that are operating the systems in which those security tools are monitoring care about what's happening on those systems. They want to know. They should want to know, or they should be able to provide them some kind of information or feedback that's gonna help them. And it's not just this people in a room with big screens that pick up the phone or send an email and say, "Hey, can you tell me why you did this thing?" From a SOCless perspective, that's not how we want to think. We want to think about automation. We want to think about working together. Similar tools, similar ideas, and as much real time as possible, right? How can we get more real time? How can we get real time software inventories? How can we get real time baselines? And how can we get real time information where we see deviations? That we're not looking for needles in the haystack, but we're seeing good, strong signals. And good, strong signals, I think, are super important. So when we talk about SOCless, that's really what we mean by the buzzword. This is where we see, and maybe you have a different experience with SOCs, but my, over 20 years of dealing with SOCs in government agencies and in large commercial companies, this is generally what I've seen, and this is and I've also seen it be super effective. And hopefully this SOCless approach can make us more effective. That's kind of the idea. So that's the quick discussion on, what this buzzword is and why we think it is a good way, and kind of our mindset as we go into this at Flexport. So I talked a little bit about the bio, in my bio, a little bit about, kind of being at Flexport for 2 years, bringing Taylor on. Taylor talked about, kind of our thought process on going into this about, hey, let's do this differently. Let's be more automated. Let's be more integrated. In the last 2 years, we've been, putting good processes in place, hiring good people, and then layering in technologies that we can integrate and automate effectively to make us more effective. So we don't have to have an army of people to be super effective. That's what we really wanted to do. And as we're looking at these types of tools to bring in, we wanted to bring in tools that other teams could use, right? This kind of leads us to why we think osquery is an amazing solution for us, because it lets the IT team ask questions and get answers. It lets our engineers ask questions and get answers about setups on systems, about lots of different things. But it's about that using the same tools, right? To answer questions, and to really, really kind of dig in and figure out what's going on. So that, kind of is what we've been doing, right? Keeping the teams lean, trying to target and hit big problems. That's our focus. And taking the SOCless approach, right? So really, and SOCless, with that strong focus on automation and integration. And osquery, so far has been a pretty cool tool, for us. And, we see an amazing future for it. But before we jump into the future, let's talk about kind of, where we started. And I'll let Taylor kind of, give you a quick overview about how we started using osquery, what our deployments look like, and give you some other information about, some of our use cases at Flexport. Go ahead, Taylor.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. So like Kevin said, it's great that we, kind of all aligned internally and said, let's try out this osquery thing. It might, be helpful for our teams. We had a couple of folks, around the IT team. We didn't have a very big security team when we started on this journey. They'd had a little bit of experience with osquery in the past, but, they really kind of saw it as being, just kind of this query tool, to be able to, like Kevin said, to ask questions about different systems running in the environment. The piece that they had missed because, they had really only played with just the open source components was on how we can automate that a little bit more, to collect more information, to have some historical data to be able to look at, to help to make to help to answer those questions a little bit more effectively. So the IT team, when I joined Flexport, was actually reasonably advanced from an endpoint management perspective. We had a handful of tools. They were in the process of evaluating, looking to replace a couple of components within that stack in order to kind of better automate. So when I joined at Flexport, it was exciting because we already had these capabilities in place to be able to quickly deploy software out to our entire fleet of, at the time, was around 1,500, probably approaching 2,000 endpoints, mostly Mac. Enough PC to really warrant a centralized management platform and strategy, even though we were mostly a Mac shop. So the team had Jamfin at the time, which I think most Mac shops do, but had decided to shift to Workspace ONE to provide MDM kind of cross-functionally between Macs and PCs. They had deployed Monkey for managing application deployments on the Macs, and Chocolatey for the PC fleet. In shifting from Jamf to these other applications from the centralized MDM sort of perspective, there were some reporting gaps and a couple of other areas that they sought to really try to fill in leveraging Chef. So Chef, again, across the entire fleet so that they could, the thought there was to answer a lot of these questions that we also knew that osquery could probably help them out with. One of the interesting things, too, with this team was that they also wanted to bring in a log management platform. They wanted to bring in the ability to centralize all of the endpoint logs from Macs and PCs across our entire organization. So one other interesting, feature for Flexport, we are a young company, but we are global. If you look at the map in the slide, that was a screenshot that I took last night. Those are all of our active endpoints. I think at like 9 p.m. last night or something along those lines. That's why you see a big dot there over in China, because we have people working all around the world. So the idea behind centralizing the logs was that, at any point in time, we didn't need someone to be online. Someone could go and sift through and help to answer IT support issues. But, having dealt with these types of platforms and tried to find those needles in the haystacks, we knew it wasn't necessarily the direction that we wanted, that we thought that the IT team was going to find to the most success. So bringing in osquery and Uptick specifically with kind of the capabilities for storing and managing data would give them the same sorts of capabilities that they thought that they might get out of leveraging Chef and a log management tool. So we started that rollout process, where today probably around, approaching 2,500 client endpoints. It's been a very robust sort of rollout. We didn't really experience any problems with our fleet, but we had to think ahead to some problems that we could potentially encounter. One of those was that most of our fleet has admin privileges on their endpoints. We have a lot of, a pretty good software engineering org, and they demand performance out of their systems. And any new process that pops up, if they don't like it, they're going to try to kill it. They're going to try to remove that application and all that sort of stuff. So we needed to be thinking about this in the context of deploying these tools, making sure that they're available everywhere so that we're able to reliably manage the fleet, both from an IT perspective, but also from a security visibility perspective. Given that we had this, really good set of tooling to manage the endpoints, really allowed us to put in a lot of checks and balances to ensure that all of the applications that comprise that management stack, including Upticks, were on the endpoint. If someone went and tried to remove something for some of the applications that they would be able to remove, putting some checks in there such that we would periodically make sure that it's there. And if it wasn't, pull it, download, and make sure that it's installed and deployed and active on the endpoint. So, really fortunate for us that we had kind of that level of maturity from the IT team, and we were able to really kind of hit the ground running and get the osquery and Upticks agents deployed out to our fleet. You can flip over to the next slide, Kevin. So switching back a little bit to security, there's the question of how we would start to integrate Upticks osquery into our overall set of processes for security operations. So what you see here is a diagram that at a very high level kind of explains the initial part of our incident response workflow. So a number of different methods, as you're probably all aware, for initiating an incident, be it someone finds an issue with something and calls an incident, some automation through some, carefully crafted sorts of alerting from a system, and then we need to kick off a workflow. So building out some automation is what we've been up to, so that we can make sure that we're able to provide all of the capabilities and the resources that the team needs to effectively manage to or respond to an incident, whether it's P0 critical, all hands on deck sort of incident, or something that's a little bit less critical, but we certainly need to work to make sure that it is handled appropriately. So the idea here and looking at this workflow is that osquery and upticks really fit into this picture at the beginning, whereby we can leverage the platform to provide kind of those very specific tailored alerts that we need someone to look at and respond to. So it can play an integral role in kind of kicking off the entire incident lifecycle. And then in the course of responding to the incident, we can have the team jump into osquery, have direct real-time access to any sort of endpoint across the entire fleet. And if you think back to that world's map in the previous slide, we have people all over the world. Someone in the US could be responding to an incident on an endpoint in Europe. We may or may not have a person who can, run to that laptop and figure out what's going on it, but we have osquery on there. So we can pull real-time queries. We can look at the historical data that's been collected, and we can try to make sure that we can respond to that incident in a reasonable fashion. You can flip to the next slide. So one of the more interesting things that happened this past fall at Flexport just a couple of months ago is that we had an IT ticket get raised from one of our IT team members, escalated to the security team, saying that our SentinelOne endpoint protection software was blocking them from installing some tax software that they needed to do in order to complete a VAT tax filing with the Chinese government. So it didn't take very long to dig into this particular alert, look at the information in SentinelOne, do a little bit of Googling, a little bit of research to find that there had been an FBI alert on this particular company and software application, and some ties back to the Chinese government with malware being deployed alongside of these applications and, potentially partially embedded in them as well. And we had to quickly think about this particular incident that a traditional SOC might have taken and said, okay, block, 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 let our users to kind of bang their head against the wall, wondering, why their seemingly legitimate application that the Chinese government is requiring them to install is getting blocked from a system. So what we ended up needing to do at the end of the day was to think about this not only in the context of the security implications, but from a business perspective. At the end of the day, there was a business case for running this application. We had to take a step back to think about a way to allow and enable this application to be effectively run in kind of an isolated context, establish a monthly procedure with our accounting team so that they could use it when they needed to, but we'd keep it shut down and locked away when it wasn't in use. And then with upticks in osquery, put in some capabilities and some searches so that we can, one, keep an eye on this system when it's in use, look for anomalous behavior, because it wasn't always seeming to be present, And then also to really keep an eye on the fleet. And in case anyone decided to go around this process and say, hey, it's a pain in the neck to contact IT to get access to this laptop, I'm just going to install it on my computer. To, let us know exactly what's going on so that rather than, someone just getting an error application blocked, that we would have that context from Upticks saying, oh, it looks like someone's trying to install the China tax software. Let's open a ticket with IT. Let's work with that user to get them access to the system so that they can complete the VAT tax filing. Interesting sort of use case. And, of course, that managed SOC isn't going to be able to help you out with that problem.
Cool. Thanks, Taylor. That was a great example, and I think that leads us to a good conversation. And a lot of Taylor's examples were specifically about working with IT teams, but this idea of DevOps, this culture of working together in using automation to help streamline how you do work, right? So we can throw security in there and say it's Sec DevOps as well, right? But at the end of the day, right? We want to build security transparently into how teams do work, right? So the idea of Sec DevOps, okay, it's a great cultural idea, but it should just be the way we do work, right? We shouldn't have to call security out. We shouldn't have to call development out. We shouldn't have to call ops out, right? It should just be a culture and a way of doing work. And I think, in a lot of companies, it kind of is. It's evolving and turning that way. And it's good to see. But the idea of this Sec DevOps means that, we're focused on automation, but the big thing is we're focused on using similar tool sets, right? So we don't want to have to do different things or if we're trying to deploy software, we want to deploy it the same way, right? So, so when it comes to working with DevOps, we want to work with the teams. We want the teams to understand why things are important. And we want to help build guardrails together collectively. Guardrails for all the kinds of things that would affect security, right? Whether it's access requests or whether it's deployments or ingress, egress, data, monitoring responses, whatever it may be. We want to work together collectively to help make sure that we're solving the problems. It's fun to call it Sec DevOps, another buzzword like SOCless, but I think that buzzword or not buzzword, that it paints a good picture, and it really kind of gets the point across about building security, thinking about security first, building security into our frameworks, but doing it in a way that's not painful, doing it in a way that's automated, that's put guardrails in place, that enables agility. And when we're enabling agility, right, we're providing focus, we're providing direction, which is moving forward and not blocked. And everybody's moving, and we're trying to minimize disruptions and minimize complaints and minimize being a security team of no's, and be a security team that's helping enable and building security in, as opposed to bolting it on. So, so when we're working with DevOps, we want to use those types of tools. And I think, it's obvious, osquery has been that kind of tool for us. And I think it's a great tool. Taylor, you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, definitely. And, I think on the next slide there as well, a couple of the other benefits of using kind of a multi-purpose tool that multiple teams can kind of get their hands in is it gives them a degree of visibility into what's going on in the context of their environment, without needing to go and log into remote systems. I think a common problem that organizations often face is, how to control access to the production environment. And your production environment has your crown jewels in it. Do you really want all of your developers and engineers to be SSHing into your production system and accessing production databases and running SQL commands, willy-nilly just because it's kind of the easy thing to do? Or do we want to really break down those problems that they face in trying to maintain and operate their systems in production by giving them the visibility that they need in a manner that helps to keep us more secure? It is an agent that is running on the system. and is interfacing with the system on a level that in some ways could seem to be a little bit concerning, but that person at the keyboard logging into a system, I think is much more of a concern to us from a security perspective, and being able to kind of keep our eyes on what's happening within our production environment, and also to be able to discern a developer trying to troubleshoot an issue from an attacker who has gained a foothold onto an instance. It makes it really difficult if we can't really restrict access to those systems. So osquery really opens up the possibilities for us from kind of that observability perspective to really be thinking about new ways for enabling access or enabling visibility and observability for teams without having to give them the keys to the kingdom. Cool. So and like I was just saying, we're really looking to think about how we can use security as an enabler to kind of help to drive the various different use cases that people might have for getting console access to systems within the environment, to get real-time information from systems in the environments that might not be in logs. There are a lot of great examples that our IT team has been working to kind of develop over time, where in the past they might have had to use Chef and Python to try to gain insights off of our client fleet. I think that a lot of those use cases are ones that we want to start to transition and think about in the context of our production environments as well, because they're also very much applicable. Getting access to very specific elements on a system, be it in a registry, be it in a configuration file, things along those lines that osquery can also access and parse and provide that information visibility back to the end users. I think we have a couple of examples on the next slides. Some of the ideas that we mentioned are laid out there. The IT team had taken one of their use cases for a Chef script was to look at the execution times for Monkey. So making sure that the software update process was happening for the endpoints. Basically an attribute key value pair that was stored within a plist file stored on the file system. This was a very quick and easy one that the Uptex teams was really able to help out in crafting a quick. You can see the SQL query on the bottom of that screen there. Quick little check to look at the last update time for Monkey and be able to provide reports back to the IT team. Next slide. Another interesting one kind of pertains to software licensing. We have a lot of folks around the environment who run some virtual machines on their local host. VirtualBox is one of those free applications that a lot of people will download and install and start to use on their system. It's the open source or free version, I guess, is more concise. Has some limitations as compared to some other similar sorts of technologies. Of course, you're getting it for free, and Oracle actually licenses an extension pack that they've been known to go and knock on the door of different companies to collect fees for folks who have unwittingly installed the extension pack. Brought this issue up, did a little bit of research, and found that, look again, we find a pattern that we can build out into osquery to look for deployments of VirtualBox extensions. And this is something we can then automate We can put together a notification if someone goes and installs either on Mac or on Windows the VirtualBox extensions that are proprietary. We can let them know and make sure that we remove that so that Oracle doesn't show up at our doorstep. So a little bit of IT security, and right there is borderline compliance use cases. From a future perspective, our goals really, like we said, we don't want to have a humongous team of analysts either building up a big internal SOC who are just sifting through petabytes and exabytes of logs. We don't want to be hiring in an external entity to do the same. We want to be thinking about the data that we need, the contextualized data that we need, how we can get that in the easiest, quickest manner. osquery is proving to be a really, really helpful tool for us in the space of our endpoints, be it Mac, PC, Linux, etc. Beyond that, we were thinking, because again, the focus for us has largely been on our client environment, but we're really going to start to scale this out across more of our infrastructure, so that we're hitting a lot of our pet infrastructure, the traditional servers, virtual servers that we need to maintain from an enterprise IT perspective. And then there's also our ephemeral infrastructure, which largely comprises our software platforms. The other dimension to this is, and this is a little bit more on the Uptycs side because we are an Uptycs customer. They've started to build out capabilities in addition to this within the Uptycs platform that go into cloud security. So we're able to actually use Uptycs and the SQL constructs in the same manner that we do osquery today to ask questions about our cloud infrastructure. Going back to the DevOps use cases, this is kind of another huge one. We get requests all the time for engineers who want to get access to the AWS console so that they can just look at things. Granting access to every single AWS account, particularly production, isn't something that we really want to do. Not because we're not nice people, but just because to go in and look at things doesn't really do a whole lot. If we can leverage Uptycs and osquery types of capabilities in this capacity, where everyone gets very familiar with a SQL type of query to ask questions and get answers, we really think that this is going to help us to provide a higher degree of security and much better observability for teams in order to get their jobs done and to ensure that we're running, really good, resilient infrastructure. We'll definitely look more as well, put more pressure on Uptycs and other vendors that are working kind of in that space to see how we can extend this more. Are there other external APIs that we can pass through Uptycs in order to add even more context? Those are definitely areas that we're looking to explore. But overall, more automation and much better integrations across a whole variety of tools.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Taylor. I think that, from a future perspective, Taylor hit on some very important things. And the most important thing that we really want to do is really continue getting real-time event-based notifications, or be able to do real-time queries to take a look at how things are right now, see how things were a little while ago, and make sure that things are going how they're supposed to, based on kind of the baselines that we've set. So automations, integrations, getting more people the ability to use osquery and understand how to write an osquery SQL-like syntax to be able to get their answers without having to log in all the tools, right? So, at the end of the day, this is what people are going to want anyways. If you have a quick question, you should be able to just write a quick query to be able to get what you need. So from a future perspective, that is really our big push: more automation, more integration, more people that have access and can ask the questions that they need to get answered. And we're super excited about osquery's ability to kind of fit into our vision of what we want to do with making SOCless a reality for us, at least at Flexport, and help us be able to answer questions faster and more effectively. That is our future goal, and we're going to keep really investing in osquery and amazing partners like Uptycs to help us kind of solve those problems. So thank you everyone, and that took the time to listen to this chat, and yeah, thank you very much.